So we are going to be picking up today's class. Mr. Opadotun will be joining us anytime from now. And we are talking about research methodology today. Just like every other part of your research is important. Research methodology too is a very, very crucial part of your story. Your introduction, your chapter 1 is your introduction, laying background to the study, setting the pace for how your study is going to look like. Your objective, we've established it. It's critical to your entire work. Your objective is critical to your literature review. It's critical to your research instrument, which is your questionnaire, or it's critical to your data it's critical to your data collection process. It's critical to your choice of methodology. We established that in day one. And yesterday we talked about literature review. In case you missed any of these classes, you can watch the replay when it's uploaded on our YouTube channel. So today we're going to be talking about methodology. Methodology, it's, like I said earlier, it's a very, very crucial part of your work. Your methodology tells us how you intend to go about your study. So let me share my screen and share my slide with you. So, research methodology refers to the systematic process used to collect and analyze data in order to answer research questions and achieve your research objectives. So, it's a research, when we are looking at your work, and we go straight to your methodology should be able to systematically walk us through the process you intend to use to achieve your research objectives. Whether it's going to talk about your research design, it's going to talk about your research approach, it's going to talk about your data analysis process, it's going to talk about your data collection process, we're going to talk about ethical consideration. And I must say, when I started doing research, it took me a while before I fully understand research methodology, because I didn't quite understand it. I was doing it, but I couldn't say I really know what I was doing, because it was more like I was just mirroring what I see other people do without understanding why they did it. Until much more later, I begin to understand each of the components of research methodology. So I'm going to be walking you through the components of research methodology. So, what is research methodology? The purpose, it serves as a means to explore new knowledge, solve practical problems, test existing theory, and uncover new patterns. And the importance, it's a framework for your data collection process and validate knowledge and understanding of your work. Types of research. We have basic research, which focuses on gaining fundamental understanding and knowledge without practical implications. That's basic. Applied research, it's conducted to solve specific problems. Exploratory research, it helps to define problem more precisely. Descriptive research, that outlines the characteristics of a phenomenon. Explanatory research, explain the cause and effect of relationship between variables. So your type of research also determines the type of research design that you use. And this type of research, they are used in different fields for different purposes. For instance, exploratory research can be used in the field of science. It can be used in the field of medicine. Descriptive research can be used in social sciences. It can be used in social sciences. Sorry, I'm going to be putting in my video Sorry, I'm coming. Explanatory research, you can use it, in any field. So type of research, like for instance, in the in medicine, you want to use explanatory research to carry out a phenomenon of a particular medication. You want to test before the medication was applied and after the medication was applied. So you now check the differentials between before the medication was applied and what happened when the medication was applied. And there are researches that it is I'm coming. Let me see if I can see that type of research here. There are researches, I've forgotten the name, but I've seen it a lot. There are researches that you can carry out a test 6 months. We carry out a test 6 months. You carry out a test 12 months. You carry out a test 18 months. You now check the effect of those tests after you have applied a particular phenomenon, maybe drug or a teaching. Like a study we conducted in March in a location in Southwest Nigeria. We were conducting a study on the effects of parental conversation on sexuality with teenage, how teenage turn out to be. We are testing the effect of sexual education from parents, not from outside, not from the internet. So the way we carry out the phenomenon was we first of all carry out a test. We distributed a questionnaire and we did, it was a mixed method. We are going to get there. It was a mixed method research, and it was not academic, so to speak. Of course, we eventually published it, but it was not towards a score or a mark or something. It was an individually, it was a sponsored research. It was a granted research, so it was sponsored. The grant was gotten from the United States, so it was funded. So I was part of the team that carried out the study. So we developed our research instrument. So we went to schools, secondary schools. We went to different secondary schools to interview and we conduct. I call it mixed method, and we're going to get mixed method. Mixed method means qualitative and quantitative. And I'm going to be, if I forget, please remind me. I'm going to be telling you the difference between, because it was my supervisor then that was working with that explained. I didn't know before until then. She explained to me the difference between mixed method and qualitative and quantitative. It looks similar, but she was able to explain to me the difference. She said many people don't know the difference. I was like, to me, it sounds the same, but she said it's different. So, but what we did, I think it was qualitative and quantitative. So we interviewed them, and we also asked distributed questionnaires to them. It was not everybody that we interviewed. We selected an handful of each of the schools that we went to. We selected randomly to interview, but the questionnaire was distributed to all the students who were able to come across with collaboration with their in collaboration with their school authorities. So they collaborated with us to make it work. And then we also gave them, of course, before we distributed, we are going to be talking about ethical considerations. So before we distributed the questionnaire to them, we went there ahead. We gave them consent form. I'm jumping ahead of myself. I'm just trying to flow. I don't want to be stuck to my slide. So we went ahead, we distributed to them what we call a consent form. So they took the consent form to their parent at home. So there's a place that they will sign underneath. So anybody that come back to the school with a signed document, it means the parent has consented to carry out the study with their kids. And some parents did not consent. So it was a rigorous approach. So we told them to submit the letter to the school authority, to the designated school authority. And then they submitted the letter. So we went there, we collected the letter, we separated the people that consented, and we separated the people that did not consent. So we now went back there another day to now conduct the study on the people that consented. And the study was parents, yes, the title of the study is Parent-Adolescence Conversation on Sexuality, or something like that. So the focus was, it has to be parent and adolescent. It's not adolescent separate, and it's not parent separate. And what we intended to do at the end of the study, what we intended to do along the line of the study is that the aim of the research, we wanted to check the level of knowledge of those adolescents. First of all, we want to establish their knowledge level. And then the deficiency in the knowledge level, we intended to teach the student and the parents, because, sorry. I'm going to finish the class without turning on my video. So if you are still with me, let me say a show of hand. If you are following, let me say a show of hand. We are following, please let me say a show of hand. Let me see a show of hand. We are following. Only one person is following me. That's interesting. Yes. Okay. All right, let's continue. So what we intended to achieve with this study was, we are going after checking out you can put an event. After checking out the knowledge level of those adolescents, we now teach. Yes, the name of that research is intervention. Yes, that's the name of that research type. It's intervention research. I mean, you can intervene. So, and after teaching those parents, we now wait for 6 months. After 6 months, we now come back and check the knowledge level again. We'll now do a correlation of before the intervention was made and after the intervention was made. We now do the analysis and we come up with what we're able to discover, to achieve, to find out from that study. So that was what that study was all about. So I just use that story to give a live example of methodology, because I was saying earlier that when I started, I didn't understand methodology. I was just doing it without understanding it. I didn't know, there's a difference between when you are doing something because you have to do it, because it's a necessary chapter in a study, and you have to do it. And there's a difference between when you know what you are doing. When you know what you are doing, you can maneuver as the case demands. So that was that about that. So I've been able to mention some research types. So let's talk about research approach. And before, so I used to think research approach and research design is the same thing. It's different. So research approach and design and the research design is quite different. So research approach, talk about qualitative approach. Um, we have qualitative approach, we have quantitative, yeah, we have three main. We have qualitative approach, quantitative approach, and we have mixed method. Quantitative is, it focuses on numerical data, statistics, survey, structured observation. This method is usually used when the aim is to quantify and generalize findings. Can you see that? It's quantify and generalize findings. I could remember I was saying on day one that when you are using quantitative, your focus is numbers. For instance, you are carrying out the study, you want to target 1,000 respondents. Definitely, you cannot use qualitative. If you want to use qualitative, it's going to cost you a lot. So quantitative is good when you are trying to reach a large amount of people within a short period of time. Because with quantitative, if you use online form, maybe Google Form or Kobo Toolbox or any other platform you may want to use, you can, if you are an intensive person, you can get 200 respondents in 2 days, depending on how intensive you want to go about it. Depending on the number of people you can disturb on your contacts to help you get people to fill your questionnaire. So, but qualitative, let's go to qualitative. Qualitative, it uses themes, non-numerical data such as interviews and case studies to provide deeper insights into concept and experience. To mention case studies here, but you can also use case study in qualitative. Case study is just talking about you are basing your data collection on a particular place. It can be a country, it can be a company. Yeah, you can use case study with quantitative too, but the main thing you should take out from qualitative approaches, it's majorly focuses on non-numerical data. It's used themes, you know. It can also be what we call content analysis. It can also be content analysis. Also falls under qualitative approach. And when I do explain this to people, I used to tell them, okay, probably I don't know. Or okay, let me just say this in case I don't remember to get there. And I'm sure Mr. Paros is on already. I'm going to begin it on shortly, but let me mention that I'm sure he's going to touch on it too. So the third one is mixed method. Mixed method is a combination of both. And the other time I said my supervisor said there's a difference between mixed method and qualitative and quantitative. According to her, I don't know if she's wrong, but I believe that. She said mixed method is when, for instance, you have 4 objectives. You are testing all your 4 objectives with both, you are testing them both qualitatively and quantitatively. She said that is mixed method. But if you say, she now said if you separate it like qualitative and quantitative, it means probably you have 4 objectives, you are testing 2 quantitatively and you are testing 2 qualitatively. She said, and she went on to use some analogy. I'm going to be using my understanding of what she explained. I might not use her own exact example, but I'm going to use my analogy of what she explained. For instance, I don't want to use a localized example because I don't know the kind of people that will be watching this video later. All right, let's say, okay, let me use an example of beverage. Let's say you want to make tea. You want to make tea. there's you have milk, and you also have um I don't want to you have milk. What you have milk and and is it I don't want to use both. I don't want to use milk because these Nigerian examples. But let me use it for the sake of so you know tea is different, milk is different from whichever cola you decide to use, whether milk or Bonfita. Milk, whether Milo or Bonfita. No, milk is different from it. So when you mix it together, you cannot have it's no longer milk and it's no longer Bonfita when you mix it together. But on their own, they have their own entity, so to speak. So you can now decide to, when you mix it together, it has lost its identity, so to speak. That's kind of the way she explained it. She said mixed method is different from qualitative and quantitative, and I thought about it for a while. Let's sorry. So there's something I wanted to explain. Something I want to explain. Okay. Yes, I want to say for both quantitative for we also have sources of we also have sources of data. We have secondary data, primary data. We have primary data, we have secondary data. We have primary data and we have secondary data. Primary source of data, secondary. So in primary data and secondary data, you can have a qualitative form and you can also have a quantitative form. A qualitative form of secondary data, we call it systematic review because it's dealing with thematic analysis of previous studies. And the quantitative form is getting raw data from whichever data websites you want to use. It could be Kaggle, it could be dataworld.com and all that. So we have a qualitative form and a quantitative form of both secondary data and primary data. This primary data form is what I've explained earlier. The secondary data form is, we are using secondary data qualitatively. You can use systematic review. If you want to use it quantitatively, you get raw data from any of the available data sites that you know. So from here on, without wasting your time, let me bring up Mr. Opadosin to continue from here. So that Mr. Opadosin, if you are ready for us, you can, so I'm going to be sharing these resources with us later, probably tomorrow. I'll compile all the resources and share it with us. So Mr. Opadosin, if you are on the call, kindly come up and continue from where I stopped, sir.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, the coordinator, and I appreciate the privilege. So, without wasting much of our time, because I think we plan not to take much of our time today, we'll be talking strictly more on the continuation of this class, and based on what the organizer have started, we're talking about the research methodology. Yeah, he has really raised some very salient points, which are very key to our thesis writing or our research work. And methodology is still one of the very key that they are very important as far as our work and our activities is concerned. I hope you can all hear me. Can we?
Yes, sir.
Just the rest, can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
hear you, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. So, basically, I want to highlight one or two things because talking about research methodology, different field, different discipline has the way they structure their methodology. But there are certain things that are very salient when it comes to methodology. You can't run away from them. And they were more like the terminologies or some of the classifications that are involved in research methodology. And I want to share one or two things with us, then show us some of the practical stuff. So let me quickly try and share my screen with us so that you can look at one or two things together. Okay. Now, can we all see my screen, please? Can we see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes, we
sir.
can see it. We can see
Yes.
the screen.
Now, basically, I will run through a few things from here and we'll talk about the research methodology, research, difference between the research method and research methodology. They are quite different. And I could hear from the coordinator to make mention of something like that. Research methods are totally different from research methodology. The type of research, the main steps in research, variables and its types, hypothesis and its types, research design and its types, sample and its type, source of data, and things like that. So let me quickly run through a few things that I have on this slide. Now, talking about the research methodology, we said is a specific procedure or the techniques used to identify, to select, to process, and to analyze information about a topic. So that's the exact what methodology is all about. Methodology is that particular means of achieving our aim. We set out some objective from chapter 1. We cannot just have a final destination to those objectives stated earlier on without passing through a means. It's like somebody having a raw material. The raw materials have to go through a refining process before we can have an outcome. The refining process is what in research is regarded to as methodology. We have to run it through a specified means of getting that particular result. And that's why we talk about a technique used to identify, to select, to process, or to analyze information. And that's what distinguishes the research method from research methodology. We all have a title, a chapter in our research work called methodology. But the techniques are quite different. Techniques even different from methods. Because we have different techniques. Different discipline has different techniques they use. So in the course of this study, we will talk about a few things about that. Then research, according to John W. Creswell, define research as a process of steps used to collect and analyze information to increase our understanding of a topic or an issue, which consists 3 steps. Post a question, you collect the data to answer the question, then you present your answer to the question thereafter. So the difference between methods and methodology now. Number 1, research method is the various ways or various means of conducting a research that involve the conduct of experiment, test, survey, and the likes. So when you see somebody talking about, okay, I want to use these particular things to achieve my objective, they are talking about research method. So apparently we cannot find something called Okay, I want to use this, I want to use this. They are talking about the method they want to use. Also, he said it aims at finding solution to research problems. So all the problem you stated in chapter 1, all the research questions that you've highlighted, that you've extracted from your statement of the problem, you have to look for a way or a particular means to conduct that particular research. And that's when people begin to say, okay, on this one now, I want to use a primary data nature of analysis. I want to use test, or I want to use an experiment. Or experiment has to do with people that go to the lab. And we have experiment, we have non-experiment. Some the experimental and non-experimental. We are the one that test, that put some of our variables, the focus, the target under a particular condition. They cause some control, they cause some uncontrol. Like it's like that, especially in pure science. So research methodology is talking about the science of systematically solving the problem in a research. Also, the learning of various techniques we can use in the conduct of research. Now, there's where you see somebody say, okay, like in economics, for example, we have different techniques that we can use to achieve our objectives. One of it is we have OLS, that's ordinary least square. Under an ordinary least squares, we have different analysis that we will also run. Under just ordinary OLS, then you have some people, they will tell you they want to use ARDL based on our nature of work. Maybe it's a time series or a processional one. If it's panel, we have some techniques that are panel related. Someone can say we want to use generalized method of movement, that's GMM. And now we'll be talking about a panel related work. Now, in economics, we now have in our software, talking about the A-views, we now have something called a time series GMM analysis. So it's not only panel analysis that we can use GMM to undo, you can also use GMM to handle a primary data nature of analysis. So this really distinguishes the difference between research methods and research methodology. So looking at this, I want to talk about the type of research. Now, under the type of research, there are criteria that we'll mention so that we'll be able to group the type of this data together. We can talk about type of research. Now, we'll be talking about the fundamental, apply, action, blah, blah, blah. But there are conditions that relate to each of these type of research. Now, criteria number 1, talking about the basis of the objective. Looking at the objective as it were. If you want to achieve your objective, your type of research could be either fundamental research, applied research, and action research. Now, on the basis of nature of the data, look at nature. Okay, maybe it's the data that want to determine how you want to conduct your research. Your research can either be in terms of data as related to qualitative or quantitative. Now, our coordinator, the host, has also mentioned something related to that. So if you are considering the nature of data to conduct a research, it can either be qualitative or quantitative, or at the end of the day, the mixed, talking about having the combination of both qualitative and quantitative together. But that is extreme cases. It happens many of the times. Now, on the basis of nature of your findings, maybe the nature of the findings you want to conduct, it can either be an explanatory research, exploratory research, or a descriptive research. Now, also on the basis of experimental manipulations, that's what I just said recently, talking about the experimental research or non-experimental. So these ones, some are the experimental are the one conducted in the lab, whether control or not control or thereabout. You see some of the people in the microbiology, they have different samples. People in chemistry, they have different samples of things they will put inside the glass, put in the lab, watch it out they grow. They will put some under particular conditions and they will put some under another control. Some they are not controlling, they just want to leave it to nature. So this kind of criteria determines the nature of work or the kind of type of research you are conducting. And these are very key to whatever we are doing as a researcher. You must know the criteria of your work. Maybe your own is based on data. If it's based on data, the data we said it could be in terms of scope. Maybe somebody did a research and he did it from 1986 to 2022. You can bring your own further and say, I'm doing from 1986 to 2024. That scope, which is also part of the data related, because the data you're going to be using will be more in number of years than the person. Now, in terms of data as well, it can either be secondary data or primary data. And qualitative as it were, so let me try and explain that. It's not going to have anything that has to do with more of figures. Qualitative is basically more of writings. You review paper, you tell us the story, you conduct an interview, you explain everything there. It's not going to be numerical as it were. So these are some of the data and the nature of the criteria that determines the nature of the research that we tend to conduct. Now, main steps in conducting research, we've talked about this in some of our previous classes. And in terms of research methodology, whether we like it or not, there's something that is very key, talking about the formulation of our hypothesis. We have to formulate our hypothesis and prepare the research designs. Now, I'm going to show us some of the examples of research designs and thereabout. So, the next one, talking about the variables and its type. We've talked about this earlier on. We must be able to detect and know which one of these is our dependent variable and which one is our independent variable. You say the first variable is called the independent variable. This is the part of the experiment that can be changed and be tested. The independent variable happens first and can be considered the cause of any changes in the outcome. I could remember yesterday I said something related to that, or maybe 2 days ago. We talked about how your independent variable is the one that you want to know the effect of its change on the dependent variable. That's why I cited something about the quantity of demand and the price of fuel. It's the price of fuel that was an independent variable. It's the one that changes over time. It is that price, the change in that price, the proportional change in that price that determines how our demand will change. There's something in economics we call degree of responsiveness. When it comes to degree of responsiveness, we talk about how human respond to any change. What's our response to it? You go to the market, you bought something at worth of 15 naira, by the time you go to market today, it's already 70. You first of all say, oh girl. And with that, you've already shown us something. That's why economics is a social science. We study human behavior. So what we consider is the response to the change that happened. It's our only independent variable that changes over time. While we want to get the effect or the outcome of that change on dependent variable. We said the outcome is called the dependent variable. The dependent variable is our previous example. Is not studied for a test. Dependent variable that you are using is to measure the outcome of the test score. Apparently, that's what I just said from the other one. Now, hypothesis testing. Hypothesis is a specific testable prediction. It describes in concrete terms what you expect to happen in a certain condition. And maybe in the course of this class, very soon, I'll be talking about the null hypothesis and the alternative. I don't want to go deeper into that now. So let me quickly run through the research design. The design design refers to the overall strategy that you choose to integrate the different components of the study in a coherent and logical way, thereby ensuring you will effectively address the research problem. Number one, it constitutes the blueprint of the collection, measurement, and the analysis of data. Now, under that research design, we have what we call exploratory, descriptive, diagnostic, or experimental. We've said something about the types of it. Then we talk about our samples. In your methodology, you have to tell us your sample. You have a population, whether in terms of where you do, there's something called random sampling, subjecting every single person to the option of being, like, there's no bias. They all have equal chances of being selected. That's what we call random sampling. They all have equal chances of being selected. So in that manner, in your sample, when you have a population, like let's look at University of Obafemi University as it were. You cannot conduct a research using the whole of the students. The whole of the students in that university should not be less than 40 to 50,000 students, if I'm not mistaken. Because I know that each year, nothing less than 6,000, 7,000 students comes in. And not everybody graduate. And we have students in part 1, year 2, year 3, 4, 5, and some are part 6 like that. So let's say at worst 20,000 students in capacity. That's the population, not including the lecturers or the non-academic staff now, just pure the students. That's like 20,000 capacity. You cannot conduct a research and use the whole of the student. You can't even assess all of them. That's the challenge. So you need to streamline your population, your data, to a sample size. And sample size is talking about the subset of that population. You cannot streamline it to faculties. Within the faculty, you cannot say, okay, you are looking for at least 10% from individual faculty. By that, you've already given them equal chances of being selected. So say a sample refers to a smaller, manageable version of a larger group. It is a subset containing the characteristics of a larger population. And what is the population what the characteristics that is common to every person we are selecting is they are all students. They are all students, so they have the same characteristics and they are very key in our research methodology. Now, this type of sampling, many of us will know so much about this. We have random sampling. That's one I just talked about, or probability. That's talking about the stratify. People use stratify very well. Is either you use simple stratify or use cluster or thereabout proportional. These are just basic type of a sampling that would also be used. Now, source of data collection. We talked about primary data, and primary data talks about the questionnaire, interviews, survey, any means we want to use them. We have our secondary data also that talks about whether you get it from somebody's website, whether published journal, whether report, whether internet or articles. There's so many ways of getting our secondary data. Now, I want to briefly talk about the difference between the primary data and secondary data. The primary data is talking about the real-time data. You are just collecting it. It has not been processed. It has not been manipulated in any way. You just got it first-hand data like that. That's primary data for you. You're sure about the source of the data. It's not as if you are doubting it. Many of the secondary data, we are not too sure. Which is because quite normal of this publication, some of these sites like Nigeria Bureau of Statistics, Nigeria Stock Exchange, Central Bank, they are reputable source of data that we respect over the years. So whatever they give us, we take it as it is. Or if you go to WDI, that's World Indicator Index. I get my data many of the time from WDI because I believe that source very well. And if you go to the World Bank site, you see it there. So it helps to give results and findings, costly and time-consuming process, very key. And that's why the coordinator was saying something about when you want to conduct a primary data research work, you have to be very careful that it's not going to put you on a financial burden. That's why you have to limit the number of samples you intend to use. Now, avoid biasness of response data. Very key. Because you've already highlighted, you've given them the question. They're either to tick or to say one or two things. Then it's more flexible, not like secondary data. So the more like the word and opposite are the relation between the primary and the secondary. Now, data collection tools and techniques. All these things are under methodology. That's why I'm mentioning them now. Now, what are the tools we can use for data collection? We talk about the questionnaire, talk about the interview schedule, observation, scale, test, inventory, like that. These are for primary or whether secondary or thereabout. These are ways at which we can get our data. Then in terms of techniques, We use more of questioning, writing, orals, interview, face-to-face, telephone, or thereabout. Some you go to some sites to get some data. These are just few ways of getting our data. Then data analysis, talking about decoding, data entry, and blah, blah, blah. Now, yeah, I will pause here and open to another slide where I want to make mention of a few things. Now, it was somebody that asked a particular question the other day that made me want to say something about this. So, method and methodology, I just want to say something about, yeah, I've said something about this initially. I've talked about the method and methodology, whether it's quantitative or qualitative. We talked about this. And hey, so this is one of the ways that I want to talk about. Now, if you observe that I've just mentioned some type of research that could be conducted, but these are types of method that could be used in our analysis. And many of these are used in the advanced country. Let me put some of these foreign countries, whether UK, US, Canada, and derivative. Quite a number of research in this manner and not truly being conducted in Nigeria, but we still have people that does that in Nigeria too. Now, the first one is talking about the library-based research. Library-based research. There is somebody can tell you and say, please, I want to conduct a library-based research. It's very easy. Yeah, it happens. That simply means all the materials you are going to use, you have to go to the library. Yes, that's why every institution has their library, and library is very big. So you go to the library, you look at some of the materials related to that work that you intend to conduct. So you have to read through the document and bring out some gap from the materials, from the textbook that you've read in the library, because you have to reference some of those books. It doesn't mean that you won't download papers, you will download journals to review also, but your referencing is going to be more of what you got in the library. And it's statistically analysis, because you are going to tell us individual textbooks that you brought out and you review and what they said related to your topic. So you are basically going to be using textbooks in the library to conduct this research. So you tell us, maybe you got from chapter so. You can then structure in such a way that it's going to be explanatory. You give us the title of the text. Whatever you got from your findings there, you state it. Then another text, you do the same thing like that. Then you can now apportion values to them. Like, okay, maybe from this book, this one seems to answer this question better. You can apportion like 10 to it. So you apportion 8 to it based on your own discretion. Then you can now give us statistics about that particular options and see the one that how they related to your topic. Then the next one is field-based research. Field-based research is the one that we've been talking about when we talk more of primary data. Personal, focus, and group interview, open and closed-ended questions. They are basically field. Survey, whether mailed through telephone or using Google Form, using SurveyMonkey, whatever it means you intend to get your findings. They are field-based. Whether non-participant direct observation, like you are not there, you send somebody to do it for you, but at least they got something to work with. It's still field-based. Now, the next one I want to talk about is the laboratory-based research. This one talks about the small group control environment, use of devices to record data. That's when we talk about the pure sciences, whether the microbiology or the chemistry or thereabout. They are laboratory-based research. Now, type of methodology. If you observe, I talked about type of methods here. Types of method. Then here, I want to talk about type of methodology. Now, under this type of methodology, we talk about historic nature, ethnography, phenomenography, grounded theory, ethnomethodology. Now, under this historiography, you are talking about writing or conducting a research that has to do with history. you are trying to examine things that have happened in the past, you have to do a kind of a narrative analysis for it. If it's ethnography, you're trying to explore maybe something like social world or culture, shared belief or thereabout. If it's phenomenal, you have to be a kind of an experience that people have gotten over times. Then, if it's grounded theory, you use an inductive. Now, I want to talk about something like this grounded theory. There is this two types in research. I will show us the two. There is a particular research approach that we normally use in UK, and we call it research onions. I'm going to show us. Many of Nigeria, you can't use it in Nigeria because it's not applicable, as it were. They don't believe in it that much. So there's something called inductive research and deductive approach to research. And if it's deductive, we are talking about the quantitative, and if it's inductive, you're talking about the qualitative. So if it's the ethnomethodology, talking about examine how people use dialogue or body language to construct a worldview. So these are just participants. I'll talk about this, how to get your sample size and things like that. Inclusion characteristics, things that you have to consider. Exclusion, things that you have to make sure that they are not. Studies need to state clearly any exclusion characteristics or things that will mean that someone should not be in the study. That's why in methodology, many of us that will do more of data analysis, there's something we call multicollinearity. When you are running an analysis and there's a multicollinearity issue on your data, we exclude some data that have collinearity problem. We exclude them from the study and probably look for another data that doesn't have or that does not exhibit the same nature of multicollinearity, and we include them back and state it clearly why we exclude it. Because if you run some analysis and you have your correlation matrix, you will see some variable that have 0.8, 0.9, blah, 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 like that. Once you have something like higher value, anything from 0.6 above, anything above 0.6, such variables will be excluded from part of the analysis. So the study area is very important in our methodology. You have to tell us the location depending on the work you are doing, the material you intend to use, everything has to be stated. I will send this to because we will need it one way or the other. I will not be talking about everything fully. So without wasting much of our time tonight, I want to show us few things as related to research methodology, because my time is getting towards to an end. And just a few minutes, please. Okay, now let me continue, and I will share this with us. Now, this is chapter 3. This is methodology. Now, as far as our work is concerned, it depends on the structure of the work. Those are the things that apparently determine how you're going to structure. And some of your work, if it's Nigeria-based, I can boldly tell you some will not follow this manner. I will show you template of Nigeria, how they will do their own work. But in terms of you want to do any foreign work, I will advise to adopt this method. Now, there's something called research onions. Research onions is just more like a a diagram that has been compressed into a diagram, and it was Sander et al. That formulated it in 2009. And if you look at this strictly, if you look at it very well, let me try and zoom it. I want to show us something. If you look at this picture very well, you will see inside the bracket, you have data collection and data analysis. If you look at it, the diagram seems to be divided into two. You see cross-sectional and you see longitudinal in the second column. Then under it, you have on top of the cross-section, you see experiment survey. And under the longitudinal, you see archival research and case study. Now you see quantitative, then down you see qualitative. In between, you have the combination of the two could be mixed method. That's what we're saying. Or multi-method or mono method. You can decide the one you want to use, whether mono, whether multiple method, or mixed method. Then I said something earlier, you have either deductive or you have an inductive. You can have positivism, interpretivism, or you have critical realism. Any of the three can also be discussed in the course of your work. Now, let me go straight to part of the outline that was stated today, and that's where we're talking about the research philosophy. There must be a philosophy that back up your work. And when we're talking about the philosophy, you said the basis for forming one's opinion on the nature of the reality under study. So something must form the basis of why you want to conduct that particular research. And the basis of that, what forms your that opinion is what we call your research philosophy. We said the methods used in a study are supported by the presumption that are part of the research philosophy. So if philosophy paradigm come in different form, we have positivism, interpretivism, or critical realism. That's what I just said up here from this diagram. 1, 2, 3. So these three form your research philosophy, and you must have your own ground. Which one form the basis of your argument? Which one form the basis of your argument? And if you read through, each of them were stated in this document, and you have to state your position. And the next one is talking about the research approach. Now, looking at the research approach, it was clearly stated also whether which one do you intend to use. Is it deductive or an inductive? That's talking about the approach. You must come up with what you intend to use if you are going to run a deductive analysis or you want to run an inductive. And that's why this diagram is very straightforward. So your research approach is either of these two, either an inductive or a deductive. I hope you can see. So you have to pick one. Then coming back to this, either mixed, qualitative, or anything. It's not as if the one up is for a section. No, it's the diagram that we are talking about. How they were the circle. This circle, the one with data collection is one, the other one is one, the other one is one, the other one. But the beauty part of it is that you have to stick to one. Or you can either do quantitative, or you do mixed, or you do qualitative. So in your research approach, you can either stick with either inductive or deductive. It doesn't mean that the graph is divided into equal halves. Maybe the one up. No. Where we are considering is the circle, individual circle inside the diagram. Then the next one you're talking about is research methods. On your research method, you have to tell us which one are you using. We have two main ones we consider, and they are here. You have qualitative and you have quantitative. You have to tell us, and that's your research method. Now, you have to tell us which one you intend to use. Is it qualitative or quantitative? You have to explain. Then you come to research strategy. When you now get to your research strategy, you have to tell us how you intend to get it done. Like this work now, we said we want to use a quantitative. Are you getting my point? Quantitative was stated. And how do we intend to get it done? You said the research plan will determine the best way to gather important or pertinent data whether experiment, whether interview or investigative experimental studies, whether questionnaire or thereabout. He said that this thesis will explore secondary data. Can you see from the London Stock Exchange? After mentioning the condition, there must be a statement that will capture what you intend to use. Strategically, you must tell us your research plan. So can we see now that we have the research philosophy, whether positivism, interpretivism, or critical realism? You must mention and you must stick to one, which you want to use. Your approach, either inductive or deductive, you must stick to one. Inductive is a primary related work, while deductive is strictly more a secondary data and more like a techniques. So this thesis uses a deductive approach. You have to be clearly stated. This is it. You have to state the one you want to use in your work. You must state it clearly. So then how do we intend to achieve this data? We've already stated that this study will use what? We will explore a secondary nature of data, and we stated where we're going to get the data from. Now you come back to your next things to talk about is data collection and data research method. So from your data collection, you have to state it how you intend to adopt the paper and thereabout, blah, 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 and you move on with that. Then you do your analysis. Now, look at this one now. We eventually use some of these Thomson-Reuters, Bloomberg statistical techniques and things like that. This is where we got the data from. We splitted it into this, but we use strictly the London Stock of Exchange for the data. And I can show you, and if this was you to do the analysis, and I can show you, okay, the remaining ones are not here. I think this is just for the chapter 3. I can show you the chapter 4 of this work and the chapter 5 where the analysis were being conducted. So what I've just shown us here is the steps to our research methodology. That is that because we had the templates for things to follow, talking about our research approach, research philosophy, research designs, and things like that. These are what we meant by research design, research strategy, philosophy, and approach. So this research onion picture really help a lot. It helps a lot so that it will stick, it will guide you on how to structure your approach. If you see the diagram, research philosophy is talking about whether this, can you see? Your research approach is talking about this. Your research method is talking about whether qualitative, quantitative. Research strategy is telling you whether case study, archival research, survey, or experiment. Time horizon is telling us whether longitudinal or cross-sectional. I hope you could see. So this diagram is a very good one that every researcher needs to learn, and you must adopt it over time, even though you are not explicitly stating it in your work, but they are very good ground as a researcher on things to follow. So let me quickly go to the other things that I want to show us tonight. Okay. Let me share this slide now. Now, can we all see my screen again? Good. Now, look at this. There's still a little introduction that will follow the work. This is another work entirely. And you see, it's the same thing, but what I did to this was to change the color. It's the same thing. So all I did was just to change the color so that it won't look the same. So research philosophy follows, approach goes by it, method goes, strategy goes, data collection and things like that. And model specification. This one requires a model specification, and I think so. This was the analysis that I did for the work. Based on the nature of the work, how we got the data, we had to do this. And based on the objectives, different things were conducted. These are the way I did did the work and did the analysis. So what I'm trying to show us from here is just basically, yes, there's a particular method that we use to calculate the returns. I can remember. That's where eventually you have to do some of this analysis. Yeah, let me say something good. Thank God. I said something about multicollinearity, some of the way to remove our variables if you are doing the secondary data work. If you observe the value here, you will see from the beginning to the end, there's nowhere we are. If you observe this is only when we have 0.9 something, which will remove this variable thereafter from the work. We remove this because we discover that we have 0.9 is 0.09, but here we have 0.9 associated to this. So instead of you removing it, you can demean. There's something called demeaning the value. So you can demean the value if you are running the analysis. So, and we just did for the work like that. But our basic analysis, our basic work tonight is not to talk about the analysis, is to talk about the methodology. And I've just shown us what we meant by individual sections of our methodology and how you are going to structure your research philosophy, how you're going to structure research approach, what you mean by research approach. This picture alone is enough to guide us about what we mean by research philosophy, what we mean by research approach, what we mean by research method, research strategy, and thereabout. So as a researcher, I believe you can go online, search for it, and read more about it. So this is just basic things that we need to know about methodology. The other things that has to come out with methodology has to do with maybe your model specifications, and that one is aside. It's really aside. So then different work entails different structure of methodology, and some university also have their own way of structuring their methodology. So without wasting much of our time, I don't know, maybe I've been able to pass a little knowledge to us about certain things that we need to take into consideration while developing our work. Now, concerning this class tonight, I could crop out from this document of the work that I've just shown us, maybe one of the two or one of those two. I can carve out the chapter 3 entirely and send it to the coordinator so that you can send it to the platform also, so you can read through what is being said, how you can structure your own research approach, research philosophy. But just know that there are basic things that you have to discuss. And that picture alone, that research onion picture, has given us an highlight of what is expected of us to discuss in terms of research philosophy, research approach, research strategy, and methods as well. And how we're going to conduct our data is also there, whether primary nature or secondary. All these things are the same over times. They are not really that difficult. It's only when you are going into the advanced part of it that you begin to see some other things. So I believe we don't stop learning. And there are still so many things to learn. There are still so many things to learn. So I believe that God will help us to be the best researcher and the brilliant researcher that we tend to be. Thank you for your time tonight. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. All right. Do we have any question? If you have any question, you can show you can raise your hand. You can show a raise of hand or type your question in the comment section. Okay, what I would just say is that so that you don't get yourself confused, there are institutions that they will specifically demand that you use research onion, and there are institutions that will not demand that from you. So depending on what is demanded of you, that is what you use. And what you decide to use will determine the kind of terminology you use. Determine the kind of terminology you use in your work. So when it comes to research onion, you use terminology like positivism, interpretivism, deductive, inductive, research onions. So those are the terminology. In the normal one, if you are using positivism or interpretism, you will score 0. So it has to be specifically research onion before you can be using. And to break it down for you, in all the research onion, Mr. Padoto, please let me put up the research onion diagram again. Sir. So your research onion, like you said, whatever you decide to stick to, there must be consistency in your choice of words and terminology. For instance, in a normal research, if your research is quantitative goes with positivism, and it goes with deductive. Deductive means ability to deduce. Inductive means is subjective, it's perceptional. I don't know if I'm making sense. So if we are choosing something, we are choosing a particular thing, there must be consistency. You have to stay in one lane. You have to stay in one lane. And if you are not using research onion, let's know you are not using research onion. And if you are using research onion, stick to it and be consistent. So if you are not using research onion at all, you want to impress your supervisor, you are using interpretivism or positivism or something, that work is 0. So it is when it is specified that you use research onion, then you use right terminologies. So if your work is quantitative, then it is interpretivism, deductive. No, it is positivism and deductive. You get, if your work is qualitative, then it is interpretivism and inductive. Okay. Oh, quantitative is in positivism and inductive. Why qualitative is interpretivism and deductive. Deductive means you deduce, like is based on perception, based on opinion. And like you said, go and study more on what research onion is. So what I'm just trying to bring out is there must be consistency in the choice of words. There must be consistency in your systematic your systematic arrangement. There must be we talked about methodology is about the ability to is a process of systematically arranging your process in such a way that it can help you to achieve your research questions. So there must be consistency of use in words and terminologies. Okay. Do we have, let's talk about research. The last component in every research methodology is ethical consideration. Like the example I was sharing the other time. The example I was saying the other time of the study we conducted. You can stop sharing your screen, sir. So the example I was sharing in the work we conducted the other time, that we gave students consent form to go and give their parents to fill before we can now conduct a study with them. And the parents that didn't fill the consent form, we separated them. And the parent that filled it, we sorted them out of each other, and we focus on the one that gave us consent to continue. So ethical consideration, it includes informed consent, confidentiality, avoidance of harm, and anonymity. There was a time I was given some data to impute on my system, and I had to do something. I had to travel. So in order for me to be able to meet up with the deadline, I carried the data and I traveled with it. And immediately my boss knew. She told me immediately that I should send that data, I should send those questionnaires, I should send it back immediately, and I did. And she told me that it's unethical. So what if anything happens to me on the way and the information people give is compromised, that it's unethical to travel? So that's how serious ethical consideration is considered to be. So, and in schools, they will ask you something like, where do you intend to store your data? On which device? For how long? They will ask those are ethical questions, ethical consideration questions. Like, the data you are collecting, for what purposes do you want to use it for? For how long do you intend to store it? Who are the people that will have access to it? These are ethical questions. Because if ethical consideration is breached, the respondents involved, they have every right to take legal actions against you. And then the information they are giving can cause harm. For instance, a teenager that we are conducting a study on, and that teenage girl went on to become a first lady of a country, and somebody laid on the study we conducted some 20 or some 30 something or 40 something years ago, and they used that information to hammer, to discredit her or something. That is very, 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 very dangerous. And that's why in this part of the world, some people are very, very, very careful in releasing information. And when you are collecting data, you don't ask people for their names. Occasionally, if you want to ask for numbers, you have to protect that data with your life. It is very, very important, because the data people are releasing onto you can kill them if it gets to the wrong hand. So there must be ethical consideration when data is being collected, when data is being processed. And it has to be stated how you intend to go about your ethical consideration. It's very, 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 very important. Confidential. They have to be rest assured that whatever they are giving out is confidential. It's not going to be made to become public knowledge. Yeah, because when there's some data you collect that you're extracting the innermost thought of people, what they will normally not share. You are collecting data of people that some things you are collecting, they will not even share it with a friend, and they are sharing it in a questionnaire. This must be approached with a sense of responsibility that this thing cannot be compromised. So yeah, that's that about that. And then there are different data collection tools for different purposes. Quantitatively, there are data collection tools. Qualitatively, there are data collection tools. Quantitative can use SPSS, eView, Stata, Microsoft Excel. For qualitative, we have two major ones. We have NVivo and Atlas TI. Another. So if you have any question, it's like there's nobody that has any question. If there's any question, let's ask it so that we can round off this call. It's getting longer than we intended already. Right. So these materials will be shared with us later. Every other thing has been touched. Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned inclusion and exclusion criteria. We are collecting data, there should be inclusion and exclusion, depending on the kind of data as I said, depending on that kind of data, the kind of study you are conducting. Your kind of study will determine how your work is structured, and also the instruction that you are given in your school will also determine how the methodology is structured, because every department, they have different components that they ask for. Like he was talking about some models, it is not every and then depending on it varies for every. There are people, there are department that they will demand that you carry out a pilot test. No, we didn't talk about pilot tests. They will demand that you carry out a pilot test. So from the pilot test, you determine the validity and the reliability of of your research instrument. If it's valid, you go ahead. If it's not valid, you conduct it again. All right. So I can see that there's no question. So we are going to be putting an end to this study. I hope these 3 days has been really, really helpful. Okay, Mr. Okwadoto, there's a question for you from the WhatsApp group. Said, thanks so much for this. However, I feel positive and deductive goes with quantitative, while interpretation and inductive approach goes hand in hand with qualitative. Yeah, we've said it.
You said what?
All right.
What's the question, sir?
No, she's just repeating what I said earlier.
Okay. Just from the structure of the material, positivism and deductive are quantitative related. Like I said, in your philosophy, you have to talk about positivism. Then in your approach, you talk about the deductive. That's when you are considering a quantitative analysis. If it is qualitative, you talk about the interpretatism and you talk about the inductive or a qualitative analysis. That's what I said. So any other question? To buttress what the coordinator has said about the importance of ethical consideration, I will show us something. Look at this. This is an ethic form that has to be signed. Every work, it does not, because Nigeria here, we don't take into consideration. There is no student in other country that do anything like primary data nature of work that doesn't go through this kind of form. You will fill the form and the form will be approved. For this person, this is the approval letter before we conducted the analysis. This is the approval. Say your application, blah, 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 an assessment and blah, 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 has been approved by the business and creative industries. That's the committee. So if you wish to make any significant changes to the study, you must seek the committee's approval before actioning them. Can you see the importance of the ethics concept? Ethics is very, very key when it comes to research. So I just try to buttress that. You just hear that many of us, we don't take into consideration as it were. There are forms that have to be filled when you are to do anything related to primary data, because you are getting an information from a company or from an individual, and the information has to be kept as like such that way that it won't go beyond what you intend to use the work for. I think in some of the work, we used to state it clearly that the work, the data gotten from anybody will not go beyond, the what is being needed, what is being used for, something like that. Okay, I think I have one here. Let me quickly show us. Let me quickly show us so that we can take into consideration that ethical consideration is very key. Now, say ethical consideration. Can we see my screen?
Yes, you can see it.
Confidentiality and anonymity is paramount to protect the privacy of the participant and things like that. Moreover, the researcher will uphold principles of fairness, respect, and naturality throughout the study, refraining from any form of coercion, manipulation, or that is, you won't force them. There is always a form we send to them. That's the consent form. To every participant, they have to fill the consent form. After filling the consent form, that's when they can now have access to this questionnaire that we design and things like that. Finally, the researcher will adhere strictly to applicable legal and institutional guidelines governing the research ethics, securing necessary approval from ethical review board or institutional review board, that's RM, before commencing the study. So before you can go through any kind of world that involve getting information from any company, individual, or group of people, it is expected that we maintain the ethical part of the data collection, and God will help us. So, methodology is very wide. It just depends on the nature of the work you are doing. The method used for one will be different from the methodology you structure for another. But the most important thing is that there are certain things that are very key. Look at this structure of, let me show us this particular work. I don't know, do I have it here? I don't think so. I don't think I have it here. So, okay, let me see. I can just show us something like that. I don't think I have it here. Maybe in any of our class thereafter, I'll be able to show us something like that. I actually have something to show it. I don't think I have it at this moment. The methodology is different from normal way of, but it depends on our nature of the work. It depends on what we tend to do. That's how you structure. But that's a very important key. Like the organizer have mentioned and myself have said one or two things. They are very key as related to our methodology. So God will help us. Thank you for the time.
All right. So good night, everybody. Hopefully we meet another time.
Thank you, sir.